estate really because I met a developer who had just acquired a bunch of residential condo projects that were in receivership, really as a result of the recession.
Hmm.
Um, they were selling a high-rise tower in LA that really the opportunity that was presented to me was, come be a part of this team and help us sell out the condos in this building. And for me at the time, because I had no experience in real estate, I really had, zero idea what that meant. All I knew was that I was unhappy where I was, and I was transitioning, out of the entertainment industry. Um, and it was a great opportunity for me to explore something I'd never done.
Hmm.
And from there, I quickly learned that real estate was a very fascinating business that was, multi-pronged in so many different ways. It was a combination of technical skills, personable skills, and it was just way more fascinating than what I had initially imagined was like me taking people in my car, driving them around to buy houses.
Hmm.
And so, really, that's how I got into development marketing. And really, that's how I am today. It's 15, 16 years later. I,
Yeah.
I sold three towers the first couple of years in my career, and then went on to join hands with the agency when the agency started in 2011 in Beverly Hills. Um, and was a part of, them launching the agency development group where I was with them for almost 10 years.
Mhm. Very nice. Holy cow. You said you were in the entertainment industry. What did you do in the
I
entertainment?
moved to LA from Seattle after university for a very, very, I want to say, you know, low end of the totem pole job at Sony Pictures, Sony
Mm.
Pictures International Television.
Hmm.
I wanted to, I thought at the time I wanted to be an entertainment journalist or, a broadcast journalism person. And so that was my foot in the door to get into LA and, where there are more opportunities.
Hmm.
So I was there for almost 3 years.
Wow. That's really cool. That's so funny as you as you say that. I could like see you being one of the um journalists, like being one of those individuals. Like because what would you have done in the entertainment world like if you continue pursuing that?
Well, my job at the time, we were working, I was in the international TV department. And at the time, they were taking pretty much American sitcoms that did really well and repackaging them to sell to foreign territories. And
Mm.
so I was a part of essentially repackaging Married with Children, but for Russia, Ugly Betty for India. And so my job at the time, I would follow a script and like watch the show and just write camera direction.
Mm.
The phone rings, so camera pans in on phone. Ted Bundy walks through the door, camera shifts to front door. Like camera direction pretty much on these scripts, and that's all I did.
Mhm.
And it was great exposure, but you can imagine how fun that was doing that all day long.
That's
And it was an administrative job, so I was doing a lot of, cataloging um, old videos and back in the time during that time we were still watching stuff off of VSH
mhm.
tape. And so literally boxes of VHS tapes, putting them in, watching them, hitting play, rewind, doing that whole thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Dang.
I mean,
Yeah.
I came out here like because Ryan Seacrest was really, I feel like at the peak of his career with
Mhm.
um what's that American Idol,
Mhm.
and he was, he had his radio station here, and he was on E Entertainment News. He was everywhere, and I was like, wow, that's so amazing. I want to do that. And so, I was a communications major with a concentration in journalism. I thought I
Mhm.
wanted to go into investigative journalism. Um, and I think that there was a lot of interest in that, but it just seemed more fun to do what Ryan Seacrest was doing.
Mhm.
And so that was my moving to LA to chase my dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's so cool how you, like, stumbled upon then the real estate development side.
Hmm.
Talk to me about your experience with Mauricio and like Mauricio, but the owners of the agency, and like what was your role in developing that development
Hmm.
department for them?
Well, I had met Mauricio and Billy Rose, who is also one of the founding partners, a couple of years before the agency was started at the second, was it the second? No, the second project I was selling in Koreatown.
Mm,
And I had met them and they came in as kind of the high end Beverly Hills brokers. We were looking at doing a potential like co-list with them for the penthouses in this building. And so it was a brief meet and greet. I mean, I thought I didn't really have much thought because I didn't really know them. You know, they were nice. They seemed great from my brief interaction with them.
mhm,
And when they started the agency at the time, I was leaving my third project, and I was kind of on my own rights, trying to be a part of the Ritz Carlton residences at LA Live,
mhm,
and that was a building that had been selling for a few years, but because of what happened over the recession, sales had really stalled, and there was a lot of changes happening internally there. And I wanted to somehow get involved on that project because it was like, it's a branded high end luxury project that I had yet to really touch.
mhm,
Everything I'd been a part of before, my first three projects were more mid market.
mhm.
I can't believe like we used to sell condos for $280,000. And I think like the most expensive one in my third project was probably close to 1 million. And
Mm.
so to be able to be a part of something like the Ritz Carlton, where the entry level was just under 1 million, and the most expensive condo was close to 8 million.
Mhm.
And so I was trying to get involved there, and it turned out that they were also trying to get involved. They were going after the listing for that whole tower, and I was having my meetings with the owner developer AEG, and obviously Billy and Mauricio were meeting with them too. And so they were the ones. AEG was the ones that kind of connected the pieces. Like, hey, we met with this girl Hannah. She has some experience in development sales. You guys want the listing, like maybe there's a way to make this work. Cause when you're selling a building, I was pretty much there, like I lived there. And Billy and Mauricio both had a ton of other business that they needed to handle. And so they couldn't live there. And so um, I ended up joining forces with them. The first year of me being at the agency was really getting sales at the Ritz Carlton up and running. And then, as we found success with that, they wanted to build out a proper new development arm to the brokerage so that they could then go after more larger projects and, get listings like the Ritz Carlton. And so
Oh,
after the building was sold out, we sold out $375 million in just over 2.5 years.
mhm,
I got more involved kind of on the front end of the business with, business development. And at the time, I was obviously building out the team of people to really run new development from, project managers to marketing people to research and, research analysts and things like that.
mhm.
So it was, yeah, we started. That's how we started, and
Yeah.
we went from 0 to 60. I feel like very very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. Damn, to have
Mhm.
to take on a, that big of a project, it's nuts. From the real estate agent perspective, like, or I want to say like real estate teams, because obviously developers are looking for experienced individuals to sell off
Mhm.
something like,
Mhm.
$400 million project.
Mhm.
And so like from a real estate team's perspective, like how do they go about finding deals like that, like the one you found with Ritz Carlton?
Well, from a real estate agent's perspective, look, I think there's a few ways you can go out and start. I think I call it mining for these deals. A lot of it obviously has to do with relationships, but it's really just relevance in the market and looking at real estate as a whole and not just, single family, like what's the next house I can go after, what street am I door knocking, but it's really looking at whatever city or town or community you're in and going, okay, we have 7 cranes in a 7 block radius, like what are they building, and just being curious. about what's coming in, whether it's, rentals or mixed use or condos or office building. I think kind of having your finger on that particular pulse, and trying to track it. And, I think with everything else that we do in life, if there is a will, there is a way, right?
Mhm.
You're curious about getting involved on something. You're curious of, what that project is. You figure out, who's the developer, who's the equity partner, who's the GC. Do I know anybody that like in my network that's connected to these people? Then you go from there. And it's literally
Mhm.
just a matter of being consistent and persistent until
Mhm.
you get in front of the right person.
Yeah. Are there any I'm like my marketing hat can't help but I can't help but to put that on. Are there any indicators that show a developer is about to start a project? Like, and if so, like where would somebody find those indicators?
Well, I think you know, I think every market is different again, but with LA County, or let's just call it California,
Mhm.
um, Department of Building and Safety, when files or when
Mm.
permits get filed or when plans get submitted, like that's kind of where it shows up.
Mm.
There are people that are really great at kind of maneuvering through the antiquated nuances of LABDS and kind of checking and making sure that they're getting updates. But
Mhm.
that's really kind of the first plan. And then if you are in the market and you're kind of already mining that, like you'll hear things. Like people know, people talk. Um, and it's really just paying attention and listening to what people have to say.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. In my city, the little city of Redlands, we actually had a group of investors who just bought. So we have a old town like mall over
Mhm.
here, and it's been. I mean, since I've been over here, since I've been alive, I've seen it. I remember going there as a little kid. Um, I recently seen on the Redlands Facebook page that investors just bought that whole entire mall. And
Mhm.
what they're gonna do is like so like the state we have a state street that is
Mhm.
very similar to I'm trying to think of a street in LA that's a popular street. I don't want to say Rodeo Drive. That's very
No, like maybe
yeah.
Like Wilshire Boulevard.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And so we have a street that all the bars, all the shopping, all that stuff is in
Okay.
there, but on
Mhm.
a smaller vibe.
Mhm.
And then the street ends right at the mall. And
Mhm.
so the investors actually bought that. And what they're going to do is continue the street on and then split the mall in half and then create, I believe it was condos at the top and then shopping at the bottom. And
No,
so,
interesting.
yeah, it's very interesting. But that's what it just reminds me of that when you talk about like those indicators and seeing like the permits of
Mhm.
um that's public record, right? You could like pull the permits that
Exactly.
are
Yeah.
yeah on all
Well,
the
look,
sites.
and there's also early indicators too. If you see a building, an existing building that's been vacant,
Hmm.
if it's a retail building and there hasn't been any tenants in there for a long time, or if it's I feel like a lot of parking structures are now going away, right?
Mhm,
Because people are building on them.
mhm,
There's just early indicators that I think signify progression and gentrification of those neighborhoods.
mm.
And if if these things are of interest to you, you just can't help but notice.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So you go in there and, a development like the Ritz-Carlton, is it like a listing presentation? Like I'm pretty sure you're familiar with, the
Mhm.
generic listing presentations that listing
Yeah.
agents go on. Is it
I mean,
is it
I
like
think
that, but more intense?
at
Yeah, go ahead.
that point, I can't speak specific to the Ritz-Carlton because,
Mm,
Billy and Mauricio obviously presented themselves. I was not involved.
mm,
Meanwhile, I went in to essentially interview to go work for AEG in some
right.
capacity because I wanted to be a part of that project.
Mm,
Obviously, I wanted to sell the project and somehow be a part of the sales team, but at the time when I was um, talking to them, they did not have a listing agent attached to them, and
mhm,
so I was meeting directly with them.
mm,
Fast forward as I've been a part of now, I want to say probably hundreds of new development pitches. It is very much a listing presentation of sort, but it is very different.
mhm,
I think, a lot of times with resale agents, you're really pitching kind of yourself and how you differentiate what you do in the marketplace. With new development projects, it's really spending more time talking about, I want to say, strategic ways to position the project in the marketplace and understanding who the target demographic is and what the marketing, the big picture marketing strategy is that will not only target but capture the end user. And, being able to lay out a plan with not just ideas, but then touching on how you're going to actually execute.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like that. I'm pretty sure your sales skills and negotiation skills got to be top tier in order to walk into one of those and lay out that plan, for the developer.
With new development pitches, I feel like it's so much more customized and tailored for that specific project and that specific developer, and the development team, like what they need. Like if you are pitching to a group like Blackstone, where they are more what I call financial mechanics, you're talking much more high level about numbers and pricing and absorption, marketing budgets, and just kind of overall ROIs and how you anticipate essentially the cash flow happening. If you're going in and pitching to an operating developer who is, let's say, more emotionally attached to the building, they want to know about how this is going to be just the best project and how it's going to get in front of everybody and garner all the attention, right? Financial mechanics want to know about the P&L, and non-financial mechanic developers want to know how their thing is going to be the biggest, shiniest trophy in town.
Where do you start? So say like getting past I want to say what did you call them? It's not listing appointment. What's the appointment with the developer?
I call it a pitch presentation.
Pitch presentation. I like that. It sounds a little bit more professional. The pitch presentation. You got that secured, right? You walk in, do your thing. I'm Hana. I'm doing my thing to sell this development. What's the next steps? They say, yes, let's do it. At what stage of the development do you start doing what?
Well, if they say yes, you start immediately. First step is, okay, let's iron out the terms and conditions of the agreement. And it goes everything from, with these long form listing agreements on projects, it is way more robust than a traditional, single family house listing agreement. And it includes everything like, staffing, marketing budget, utilization of leads, ownership of leads and prospects, who's doing what. Sometimes there's a key personnel involved. Sometimes there's already an entire sales team that has been planned, proposed, and committed, right? So, and other times it's rarely other times. I'm going to say other times it's less than that, but rarely is it less than that. The terms and terms of a new development listing it takes more time. I want to say, that alone will take anywhere from, 3 to 6 months to just iron out, because everybody has their lawyers involved and everybody needs to sign off on the costs and things like that. But essentially, once there is a verbal commitment, there's kind of like a, interim LOI that's signed saying, we're going to get started with X and Y things. And it just depends on what phase of the project you're at, right? If the building is still under construction and you're still, let's say, ironing out floor plans, then you have kind of your, research and planning team focused on finessing floor plans. Sales is involved in conveying like what market demand is, what people want, and what they're looking for when they're shopping for homes right now. Right? Like, do they want the proper 2-bedroom and 2 baths, or is it more like one major primary suite and like a flex second room / den thing where they can make it into an office or a studio or a guest bedroom, depending on who your end user is, right? And then there's parts like programming, looking at what the amenities of a project are, service components. Is it full service? Is it not? Are there concierge pillars that need to be considered. Is there retail on the ground floor? Do we need to figure out who and what sort of retail tenants would best support the residents in this building? And then, you look at how are we positioning this in the marketplace? What does the branding need to look and feel and sound like? How does that resonate with the end user? So, it's a complex and lengthy program before you can even start sales.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. It's not your it's not your normal, real estate, I would say, listing where you take some
Right,
nice photos of it and then throw it up on
right,
the MLS, and
exactly.
you let
Right.
Zillow and all those third-party services do all the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, it's a lot more intricate. It's a lot more granular in the sense
Hmm.
that there's way more steps, obviously, because you're selling that amount of the amount of units. And
Hmm.
so, what I was actually curious, like, what do you do? So obviously, if a developer is hiring a real estate team or real estate agent, broker, whoever it may be, when they're hiring that individual, obviously people are going to walk into that development and obviously not going to buy it. What is usually the terms with a developer with those individuals that are not being represented by brokers yet, and they're looking to buy like a $3 million condo, like similar to the development that you are selling? And so, like, can you put in the terms like, hey, like we're going to basically um, keep all the leads as the broker that the developer is hiring,
Well,
or
no. So
how does it work?
on these bigger projects, there's usually a marketing budget that the developer is responsible for.
Mhm,
So let's say the developer, is the marketing budget includes $120,000, digital spend for a 12-month term. So
mhm,
it's $10,000 a month on different digital ads.
mhm,
Any leads that are procured with the developer's dollars
mhm,
belongs to the developer. So if
mm,
Cameron, you saw, let's say, an ad, a Google ad or an Instagram ad on a project I was representing where the developer paid for that campaign. If you
mhm,
come to the building, um, you as a prospect, that lead belongs to the developer. And
mm,
so, my goal is to essentially bring you in and show you how your life is going to be so amazing living here. And I
mhm,
want you to buy here. If you
mhm.
decide you're not going to buy here,
Yeah,
I cannot be an agent representing you on something else that's not in that building.
right.
Typically, that's how it is. I mean, I think that there's always an exception, right?
Mhm,
If let's say developer agrees to $10,000 a month, but I'm also now agreeing to $5,000 a month, so together we're putting 15.
mhm,
There's always exceptions, and so it's hard to say it's like one way.
mhm.
There's only one way.
Yeah, yeah, it's like project dependent, like
Yeah,
it's all,
exactly.
yeah, based on the project. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
interesting. Um, it's so kind of like transitioning over to because you talked about going into those pitches, getting them, and then starting the whole project, starting the marketing. You guys handle the sales too? Like, so
Mhm.
yeah, if you were on the real estate agent side, you're the one that's
Mhm.
going in there, and I'm assuming you're not doing an open house, but more of like an eventful, like, hey, we're about to have this grand opening for these condos or whatever
It
it may have you.
Yeah, I think again, it just depends on the size and scale of the project, right? Like if you are to get a 10 unit condo building,
Hmm.
the program budget and strategy is very different than if you were to get, let's call it a 200 unit condo building,
Mm,
right? So um, typically, and when you say you market, it's like, I will drive essentially client management, strategy, sales, operations, and touch all of those things. But on these bigger projects, like we have to hire essentially a third party marketing agency or a third party
mm,
digital agency or a third party, so and so, because it's not the real estate brokerages are not made. The business model does not include, full service of essentially creative services that the developers need.
yep.
You have to think about like, what a website's being made, floor plans being made, brochures being made, and this made meaning like they have to be, designed, printed, like you have to have a proper copywriter that is messaging in a way that resonates. There's so many different pieces of it.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. And brokerages aren't built that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have in-house, powerhouse like marketing teams. They don't have.
I mean, and some do, but it's just like they don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to service a client like a developer, because it is a full-time, and it's not like it's so much more than just one graphic designer or one, website developer. Like it involves so many different specialized talents.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, what is the like pay structure for development? Like you get a development project, like what is it just like they have a marketing budget? Do they then are like, okay, let's allocate 150,000 to the real estate team
It depends. Every project depends. Usually there's like, you have your standard, listing commissions, both for the listing side and the buy side. And depending on how big the project is, those can, like, I'm tactful when I say this, but typically if developers are looking for a discount on the listing side, I always say, like, discount agents provide discount service, discount developers create discount product, right? I always am like, I don't want to call it a red flag, but it makes me look at and evaluate the bigger picture. And so, you have your listing commission terms, and then depending on where the project is, if we're involved in something and it's not going to come to market for 2 years, like, you're not working for free for 2 years, right? So there's a marketing budget that encompasses the different costs that go to the different, agencies that create the branding, that do the website, that do the renderings, that do photography, that do, all of the things. And then typically, the listing team, or, like, I guess in this instance, like, I will charge a monthly retainer. And that retainer really isn't a profit center. That retainer really is just to pay my staff and keep the lights on. Like, we're acting as a combination of project manager, client manager, making sure that the ball is moving forward and progressing in the direction we need to progress, so that we can be ready and launch this to market in the timeline we all agreed upon.
Yeah, 100%. You now do consulting for the developers now, right? Specifically for marketing, or what do you consult for the?
I'm essentially everything that I just talked about. Like, I am the person that will manage a combination of the marketing, sales, and operational stuff. A lot of times, the position I'm in now, I will work with the developer to identify who the right listing team is, the right listing agent team or sales team is, and kind of act as essentially seller's representative in all of the pieces that are involved.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. So you spoke about the real estate agents, real estate brokers finding developers. What are you advising developers to look for in the real estate agents or the brokers?
Again, it depends, but depending on, location, size, scale, and essentially how long a sales program is. And I think there's not really one secret sauce or one formula, but it's a combination of, agents that have experience in that marketplace and understand that community. Sometimes it's salespeople that just understand how to sell new development buildings, because if you have 100 units to sell, you kind of get in this, like, redundant mode of doing the same showings, right? And very quickly do these showings become very stale and boring. It goes into, you start the project really excited, like, oh my God, this is like where your dreams are going to come true. And you have the sunset for, your Thursday evening dinners, and here's your amazing creative studio, to, like, here's a room, like, this is the living room, this is the bedroom, and so it's a combination of what that project needs and really where what stage of the project is in.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times too, for super experienced agents, developers will look at them and say, Cameron's been in this business for 25 years and he's sold, $10 billion of real estate. Like he has a hefty list of billionaire clients and I want to hire him. I always say, I think, the short kind of thought of that is like, yeah, he's been in the business for a long time. He sold a ton of real estate. I'm sure he knows a lot of clients. But do you think, Cameron's roster of billionaires are all going to buy in this building?
Hmm.
Because if they're not, like, does that really matter?
Hmm.
And so it just all depends.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I've been learning lately the difference between correlation and causation. It seems like that's an example of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What would you say specifically? Because you mainly, so you said you get hired out on you're an advisor from a marketing, sales, and operations perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Your company's name is Hana, like your name,
Correct.
your first name. Yeah. I noticed that more is concentrated on the marketing side. What sort of marketing challenges do you see that these developers are running into?
Well, so to backtrack a little bit, so my parent company is called Hana. I have 3 kind of sub companies under it.
Mm.
Advisory Studio, which is my consulting business for developers, is
Mhm.
exactly what we're talking about.
Mm.
I have the second pillar, The Assembly, which is an online educational program for real estate agents that want to expand their business into new development. And
Mhm.
the Collective Marketplace, which, we talked about all the different vendors that get involved, from creative agencies to graphic designers to copywriters. It's a one-stop shop marketplace for essentially vetted vendors within this space. And so they all work together because when, I work with a developer, it's a combination of like an existing network of professionals from sales and marketing and operations, essentially everything that
Mhm.
I can match make to
Mhm.
create the ideal team for the client.
Mhm.
So going back to your question, what are some of the greatest marketing mistakes? Like, I think with marketing, it's such a big question now because over the last few years, we've shifted so much into digital marketing.
Mhm.
And with digital marketing, I think, between the changes of algorithms, which I feel like happens every other week now, right? A combination of really targeted, advertising, which
Mhm.
is also changing like every other day now.
Mhm. Mhm.
And people relying heavily on kind of automated systems. I think that's where we forget that unless there's a human involved that's really, understanding and creating a proper strategy that encompasses a holistic plan, um, everything gets disconnected.
Mhm.
Okay, so great. Now you have, a, a great ad campaign where you're getting a bunch of leads, but are they qualified leads? And okay, sure, if they're a qualified lead, what happens now? Okay, now there's like an automated email that gets sent to you. Hey, Cameron, thanks for your interest in this project. Somebody's going to get back to you. And then what happens? And,
Mhm.
it's like there's a disconnect in that. I think technology has given this perception that everything is supposed to be so much easier.
Yep.
But, in my opinion, I think it's that much harder because we're constantly reevaluating what we're doing because things are constantly changing.
Mhm.
When ChatGPT was taking over the world last year, it was like everybody was like, oh my God, ChatGPT doesn't do all of this stuff.
Mhm.
And then it was like, now what? Like, we're not even talking about it anymore. And when
Mhm.
somebody sends you an email or an e-blast or something that's written by ChatGPT, like,
Mhm.
it's like, okay. So, and so it's really a matter of um, understanding what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then having a human like overseeing it and almost having to micromanage to say, okay, these are key performance indicators that are driving results. these
Mhm,
things aren't working anymore.
mhm,
Constantly looking at, what's my cost of acquisition? Like,
mhm,
what am I paying for? Is it actually doing anything? And,
mhm,
now also with like testing periods, right? Like we used to be able to test campaigns in 2 to 4 weeks. Testing periods are now like 90 days. And so it's like, how, exactly what are you testing? What are you looking for? Like, are there huge changes in the first 30 days versus the second, you know, um, 31 to 60 days? And the
mhm.
last, like, somebody has to be looking at that and monitoring that.
Yes, yes. I love it. It I don't love it because obviously you said it's a big problem within the industry. And so, but the reason why I say I love it is because I think you're pointing on two things, which is one, over leveraging technology to a point to where they think it's a replacement for the activity.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, for example, ChatGPT is now going to write all my stuff. And it's
Hmm.
like, no, you still got to add that human
Yeah.
element to it.
Hmm.
And then second, speaking of the human element, I think the more we're leaning on the fence towards that tech side, the more we're getting disconnected from actually knowing what the consumers actually want.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so yeah, it's crazy, which then it like skews all the numbers within the when
Hmm.
it comes to like KPIs and things of that nature.
Hmm.
It like skews all of it. And we think that, oh yeah, this is what's going on because technology's telling me that's what's going on.
Yeah.
But then they forget about the qualitative aspect of it and
Hmm.
actually communicating with this consumer and asking them like, wait, the data is showing me this.
Hmm.
Is this really going on?
Hmm.
It's like, and it's like it's kind of like the quantitative data that they're getting from the tech. It's like they're not double checking it with the qualitative, and I think that
Exactly.
yeah, the purpose of
Exactly.
the qualitative.
Exactly. Look, I think that they say there's a need for data analysis for a reason, right? Like you have to
Mhm,
actually analyze the data that's being collected and saying, okay, so what is, when I look at this, what is it actually telling me? I have a project that I'm involved in now where a couple of weeks ago, we launched a new Facebook campaign and it was like, oh my gosh, it's doing so great. We got 200 leads and, what was it, like 20 days.
mhm,
And then it was like, okay, well, this is like the digital marketing agency saying this is great. Like, it's less than $10 a lead, da 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 da. Like, we need to keep doing this. And then it's like, okay, well, have you checked the quality of the leads, right? Because
mhm,
they don't talk to the sales team. So when I turn and go to the sales team and say, hey guys, so I understand that we've gone 200 leads with these Facebook campaigns the last, 2.5 weeks. Like, did you get in touch with any of them? Like, are they actually qualified, interested buyers? And they're like, nobody picked up their phone and nobody
mm,
responded to an email. And like, one guy thought it would like, it was like an Airbnb and like wanted to stay for the weekend. So it was
mhm,
like, okay, so none of these leads are actually qualified. So then it's like, okay, now here's the disconnect. I have to take this back to the marketing team and say, here's the feedback from the sales team. And
mhm.
so great that, a lead is less than $10, but none of these are actually qualified. So this campaign is not targeting the right people. Where are
Yeah,
we shifting this? But, I think that's where a lot of the disconnect happens is like you're not actually putting the pieces together and going, okay, is it actually working?
yes, yes. Looking at it more holistically.
Hmm.
Which is Hannah, this is the reason why I took a step out of it's one of the reasons why I took a step out of the marketing side and got more I've been so fascinated with I don't know if you're familiar with RevOps, so like
Hmm.
revenue operations. I've been so fascinated with that because the way they think, or the good revenue operations individuals out there, the way they think is holistic, exactly what you were explaining, where it's like,
Hmm.
yes, we're getting the CPL for leads and we're generating lots of leads. But now let me go over to the sales team. Hey, sales
Hmm.
team, how many is it taking for you to close one? Oh, well, it's taking us more than it should. Or you hear any version of that, you're like, okay, let me go back to the marketing team. Let's make some adjustments. Let's go from 500 leads to 300, but that 300 are now a higher quality of leads. So now it doesn't take as much effort or resources to close on this lead for the sales team. And so now everybody's happy when you have that like marketing and sales alignment where marketing understands that my output should benefit the sales team,
Hmm.
and the sales team having that communication with the marketing team that, yeah, your stuff is working, or no, your stuff isn't working, and
Right.
defining what working actually means. And
Exactly.
yeah, and so like it's you can only see it in that way if you take a step out of marketing and now look at it more
Yeah.
holistically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Look, I
So
think
cool.
that you hit a great point there, and a lot of what I'm doing right now is working with developers and working on projects that have been on the market and selling
Mm,
for call it a year or 5 years. And because of everything that's happened, since with the pandemic, since post pandemic, and the spike that we had to like interest rates going up last year,
mm,
sales velocity has changed drastically, but also the way that we're marketing and the way that, buyers in the marketplace are consuming real estate information has changed a lot.
mhm,
And so when I go in, essentially, I call myself the fixer. I don't love it, but it's been referenced to me a few times. So now I'm starting to use it.
mhm,
I go in essentially with, a fresh perspective because these people have been caught up in the same essentially hamster wheel for, a good amount of time. And when you do that, you have these blinders that appear over time.
mhm,
And so when I come in with a fresh perspective and I look at and audit everything they've done to date, it becomes much more obvious, right? Because I don't have blinders on. I'm looking at all of this for the first time and I can ask these questions.
mhm,
You'd be amazed at how many people or how many different sales teams on these sales projects are experiencing the same difficulties because they're still doing what they were doing a year ago or still doing what they did 3 years ago.
mhm,
And it's like they haven't changed their narrative, they haven't changed their message. Like, just like there's been three major things that happened with email marketing in the last year,
mhm.
like DNS records aren't updated. Suddenly all of their emails are going to spam. Like they can't figure out why. It's like it's almost like very nuanced technical things that they're not thinking about because you're just in the wheel, like trying to keep the wheel moving when, like you said, just sometimes you have to step out of the wheel and go, okay, do I need like a new wheel or do I just need some DW40?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. But throw that up on your X or your what is it called? Threads now. Do I need a new wheel or do I need some
Yeah,
before?
exactly. Exactly.
That's amazing. What's your so you go in, you audit the development and see what are the issues in there, and what's your because I know it depends too, probably be based on the project size, but like what's your plan of action going in there after the audit? Like what are you usually fixing?
Well, when I do an initial audit, I usually provide the client with a fairly robust audit report.
Mm,
And depending on, what my scope of engagement is, it's anywhere from marketing strategy, marketing campaigns to actual on-site sales, selling procedures, showing presentations, and then I can get into operations as well.
mm,
And so I provide a robust report on essentially all of the different pieces that are either not making sense or I feel like is, a missed opportunity or wasted money or needs to be redone or just scrapped altogether.
mm,
And I provide the client with different, essentially, recommendations. And
mm,
so from there, the client can say, okay, we really like, what you're saying about our digital marketing campaign. We really like what you're saying about how we need to do the on site showings differently. Um, Help us execute on your recommendations.
mm,
So then, because I've already essentially given them options of how to do it better or differently, there's a preliminary plan in place. And so when it's time to execute, it's really jumping into the things that matter the most to them. I mean,
mhm.
9 out of 10 times, like I do these audit reports and, they're anywhere from 60 to 120 pages long. And so,
Damn, holy cow.
So you can imagine how some of these people, if they've been doing this, the same thing for a very long time, it can be very overwhelming. And some people, some clients will even take it as an insult, like, what the fuck?
Mhm.
Like, this is my baby, this is my team. And it's like, I get it, but you hired me to tell you what you could do better. You don't have to do any of it. You've already paid me at this point. So, like, do what you want.
Yep.
And so it's like pick and choose what matters most to you. And
Mhm.
also, like, because when you are recalibrating what you've been doing, it also costs money, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't, can't just do all of these things suddenly for free.
Yeah.
So it depends on where they are in the project and, how much is remaining in their marketing and sales budget.
Yeah. You would think that developers were smart and would hire you early on in the process to avoid all of this.
You would
Like
think
you,
that.
yeah, you would think that whoever's in charge, whoever the shareholders are, it's like they're in charge and they're like, okay, well, let's hire an advisor in this city or whatever it is, and have them like we already created our plans and stuff like that. So before
Mhm,
we get started with the project or beginning stages of the project, let's have a HANA come in, bulletproof everything, and then fill any gaps that where we have them,
mhm,
and then let's continue on with the project according
mhm.
to budget. And so
Yeah.
you would think that that would be the smart thing to do.
Well, I mean, theoretically, 100%.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I feel like most developers and development teams feel like they know everything and have it all under control.
Yeah.
But again, it's hard to say they don't when they've never actually, been in this current landscape and where we are in the market, right? They've never also been in a place where, like, technology has such an influence where all of these things are happening. So, like, it's just, I say, like, you don't know what you don't know. It's nobody's
Yep.
fault. And
Yeah.
sometimes it just takes, like, you know, losing a shit ton of money or like falling down really hard to go, oh my God, we need help.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I was gonna say, so you said the impact. I was gonna say like a market shift for them to then run into those issues of like falling down real hard and then
Mhm.
being like, oh man, like we need to hire somebody.
Mhm.
Speaking of hiring somebody, Hannah, like if a developer or yeah, if a developer was somehow came across this video, how would they get in contact with you?
They can reach out to me by messaging me on LinkedIn or send me an email at hana@thehanacollective.com or, I mean, you can Google me. I feel like my name and phone number is like all over the internet. I try to take it down where I can, but it's, I think it just comes with this business.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. You and all the other real estate professionals out there, it's like it's like a bittersweet having your information online because on one
Yeah.
hand it's like it's easy to get in contact with you, but then on the other